Welcome back, everybody, to the Tone-Based Beginning Guitar series. Today, we're going to be talking about the right hand, and we're going to be learning about terminology, how to execute a pluck, the type of motion that's required, the different varieties of pluck, and ultimately, applying it to the instrument. So before we start trying to make sound on the guitar, we need to introduce ourselves to the terminology of the right hand. In regard to this hand here, we have 4 named fingers that we need to concern ourselves with: P, I, M, and A. P refers to the right thumb, I, the index finger, M, the middle finger, and A, the ring finger. There are styles of guitar that do utilize the pinky in right hand technique, but for classical, we are not going to be using it. It's important to understand where to place our arm and hand on the guitar in order to execute the best sound possible. When I try to set my right hand up on the guitar, I put my forearm on the binding of the instrument here, about 1/3 of the way between my elbow and my wrist. This allows for a balanced fulcrum that puts my hand in an appropriate position to play. You do want a little bit of elevation in your wrist, which requires you to slightly bend it downward. But notice, from this angle here, my wrist is still straight. We want a straight wrist when observed from the front, and when observed from the top, a slight curvature downward. And you may be asking yourself, how much should my wrist be curving? And that's a great question. When setting up the right hand, I take 3 fingers from my left hand, and I wedge them between the top of the guitar and the bottom of the wrist. I give myself a little bit of play, but ideally, we want 3 fingers of separation between the top of the guitar and the bottom of the wrist. This ensures that our fingers are at a slightly obtuse angle to the back of the hand, allowing us to set up for the perfect pluck. Before we get into the different types of plucks, it's important to understand where our finger should contact the string. I don't have a very creative name for this term. I call it the point of contact. It is where, for me, the fingertip, the fingernail, and the string all meet. It's at this juncture that we get the warmth of the flesh, the focus of the fingernail, and the string itself combined to create a balanced tone. And it's important for us to figure this out now, where that point of contact is, and to make sure that we make every effort to play notes at that point of contact consistently. Some of our astute viewers may have noticed that my right hand has fingernails, and we'll take just a moment to talk about why that is. Guitarists grow their right hand fingernails to provide themselves a balanced sound, while the flesh of the finger, which we'll be using in our pluck, provides a great deal of warmth to our sound. The fingernail provides focus and brightness. If you are interested in growing and maintaining your own fingernails or applying false ones, be sure to check out the lessons in the Tone-Based archive that have been provided to you on the PDF. The next thing that we need to talk about is the motion of the pluck. And the word pluck is a bit of a misnomer. It's not an accurate description of the type of motion that we need. A pluck, to me, implies a pulling motion, which is not what we want at all. A pluck, rather, is a push. And what we aim to do is to displace the string downward, applying pressure from the top, pressing, and allowing the finger to just roll off the string. And there are 2 different types of plucks that allow us to do this, and they are the rest stroke and the free stroke. Let's go ahead and talk about those now. In order to ensure that we are pressing the string into the guitar in order to pluck, we need to figure out where the motion of the pluck begins. I see a lot of beginning players initiate their pluck here at the middle knuckle of the finger. The problem with this is that encourages us to grip the string and pull away, creating a very thin sound. Rather, the pluck should initiate here at the big knuckle. I'm not employing my wrist, my elbow, or my shoulder to make any additional movement here. The big knuckle, regardless of what type of pluck that we are going to execute, is the nexus of the pluck. Notice here I'm setting up for a rest stroke. To set up for the rest stroke, I place my thumb on the 3rd string. If you're more comfortable with the 4th string, that's all right, but you want to give yourself a little bit of room. And when executing the rest stroke, I'm going to set up my I finger or index on the 1st string, and I'm going to push it straight down. Notice that this joint, the middle joint of my index finger, is not moving. We're going to not let that initiate the pluck, but rather initiate the motion from here, pushing the string inward, and from my angle, I can see that first string displaced downward below the line of the other strings. I push that finger in, and upon release, my first finger rests on the next string over, our second string. So that's how we come up with the name rest stroke. We push our finger into the string, allow it to roll off the fingernail or the fingertip, and rest on the next string over. Let's practice the rest stroke together. I'm going to start by plucking with only one finger, the index. I'm going to set my thumb up on the third or fourth string, whichever is more comfortable for you. And we're just going to practice one finger at a time, starting with the index, making sure that you rest on the next string over. And when you're comfortable with the index, move on to the middle. And when you're comfortable with the middle, move on to the ring. As you go through these simple exercises, be sure to be aware of the rest of your body. Are your shoulders tense? Are you sitting on your sitting bones or on your lower back? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you holding your breath? All of these things may negatively impact your playing. And remember, the guitar rewards relaxation. The more relaxed you are, the better you'll sound, the easier this will be. Now that we've gotten comfortable with the motion of the rest stroke, we get to employ the golden rule of guitar. New note, new finger. Make sure that you always alternate your fingers, starting with a friendly combination of index and middle finger. I'm going to set my thumb up on that third string once more, and we're going to alternate rest strokes between index and middle finger. And when this motion becomes comfortable, you can try different combinations. For example, middle to index. Or ring to middle. It's important to note that when we use any finger, we do not want to alter the position of the right hand. We want to maintain our base, the gentle curve downward, the straight angle when observed from the front. You may be tempted to rock the hand back and forth to accommodate other fingers, but I'm going to encourage you to not do this. It's not necessary. Rather, set your hand up in such a way where the fingertips are equidistant to the string, and all you have to do is push downward. Having explored rest stroke and free stroke with the fingers, now we can start talking about the thumb. Before we move on to the second of the two plucks that we will be discussing, the free stroke, I need to ask you an important philosophical question. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Give up? Let me show you. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the type of motion that, when exaggerated, we want to utilize in plucking for the free stroke, allowing the fingers to, again, initiate the pluck from the big knuckle, and if given no impetus to stop, following through all the way to the palm of our hand. Now, to execute the free stroke, I'm going to plant my thumb on the second string. If you bump into the second string with your fingers as you practice this pluck, that's all right. We're working on the type of motion right now rather than the accuracy of the motion. we want to get comfortable with the movement first and foremost. So I plant my thumb on that second string, ensuring that that second string isn't going to ring if I hit it. I do the exact same type of motion, displacing the string in to the guitar. Rather than trying to pull it up, push it in from the big knuckle. And on follow through, rather than resting your finger on the next string over, allow it to follow through to the palm of the hand, just like this. And we're going to just practice that a little bit with just the index finger to get comfortable with that motion. And when you're comfortable with the index finger, move on to the middle. And when you're comfortable with the middle, move on to the ring finger. And notice as I pluck with the ring finger, I'm letting my pinky just go along for the ride. Whatever my ring finger is moving, my pinky is going to do the same motion. I don't have to worry about extending it or getting it out of the way. We're just going to let it go along for the ride. Once you're comfortable with each finger executing a free stroke one at a time, we have to employ the golden rule of guitar. New note, new finger. Always be alternating, as I like to say. So, what we want to do now is start using different combinations of fingers. And do this at your own comfort. Don't try and do any extreme combinations right at the beginning. Start with the most simple, which I'll be executing now, alternating between the index and the middle finger. And if this becomes easy, you can try different combinations. For example, middle and then index. Or ring and index. The repertoire of the classical guitar requires a lot of different fingering combinations, so it's important at this stage of the game to develop your comfort with each of these. Having explored rest stroke and free stroke with the fingers, now we can start talking about the thumb. When discussing the pluck with the fingers, I encouraged you to pluck from the big knuckle. This is where the motion should initiate. The question then becomes, where is the big knuckle on your right thumb? The answer may surprise you. The big knuckle on your thumb is here, at the base of your wrist. This is where the motion of the pluck should come from. I equate it to turning up the volume on your remote control at home. The pluck should initiate from the base of your wrist, and your thumb should be straight throughout the execution. So now we get to apply that motion to the guitar. I encourage you to rest your index, middle, and ring fingers on the third, second, and first strings, respectively, and set your thumb up on the fourth string, situated outside the structure of the fingers and the hand. And we're going to start, like we did with the fingers, with the rest stroke. From the base of the wrist, I'm going to push the thumb inward, displacing that fourth string downward towards the sound hole of the guitar, and then release. And this is the rest stroke. And notice, as I follow through, my thumb is resting on the third string. And don't be afraid to explore playing rest stroke on the other strings as well, including your fifth string, and your sixth string. Now let's try playing free stroke with the thumb. Just like with the rest stroke, I'm going to set my index, middle, and ring fingers on the third, second, and first strings respectively for support. And just like with our previous pluck, I'm going to initiate the motion of the pluck from the base of the wrist, And rather than resting on the third string, I'm going to follow through and touch the tip joint of the thumb to the tip joint of the index finger to exaggerate the follow through. And we'll try the same with the fifth string. And the sixth. You may notice that as you're practicing these different plucks, you may run into a string you aren't intending to play, and that's fine. Ultimately, the goal is to become comfortable with the motion of the rest stroke and the free stroke. If you bump another string while working on that comfortable motion, that's okay. Accuracy will come with time. For this lesson, your listening and appreciation assignment will be to dig into the music of Italian composer Mauro Giuliani. A guitarist, composer, and cellist, Giuliani lived from the late 18th century into the early 19th century, and actually, as a cellist, played in the premiere performance of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony. The pieces that I recommend that you listen to are his Guitar Concerto No. 1, Opus 30, his Grand Overture, Opus 61, and his Sonata Eroica, Opus 150. Be sure to check the Tone Bass archive for lessons regarding some of Giuliani's pieces, and be sure to explore more works by this composer as well. Enjoy the listening.